Welcome to this episode of the Heart of the Matter. Today we're taking a very topical subject, national dialogue. And with me are people that are eminently qualified to talk about national dialogue because first and foremost, they are all Nigerians who believe greatly in this country. Starting on my my extreme left, I have Mr. Tunde Oduwole. You're welcome to the Heart of the Matter.
Thank you very much.
I have next to him Pastor Demola Ademusan. You're welcome to the Heart of the Matter. And then next to him, I have on my immediate left Mrs. Solape, Hammond. And all of them have been working and discussing this issue of national dialogue. To start with, why do you think we need a national dialogue? Do we really need one? Let me start with Mr. Oduwole.
Thank you very much. My initial position was that there was no need for a national dialogue, national conference. You have representatives of the people at the National Assembly. Why can't they be asked to discuss about the burning issues in the country? But clearly, you have a gap of mutual distrust between the electorate and these people, and not without reasons. So you have cases of fraud not addressed. You have Farouk case. You have Oduwa's case. You have cases of people who embezzled pension funds and never are walking free. So there's a reason for them to doubt that if we cannot deal with simple matters of integrity, how can we trust these people with issues of state building? And so I became a convert to say, let's discuss the issues, the burning issues in this country. First of all, the national boundaries of the entity called Nigeria was set up in 1907. And then in 1914, Lugard came up with putting together all the ethnic entities into one boundary, this entity called Nigeria. And in all of this, the ethnic nationalities were not involved. They were not sitting at the table discussing their own future. Foreigners were legislating and deciding their future based on largely things that were even driven by more economical reasons. And we patched on and moved up until 1960 and then all the push for independence and all that. You will realize that in all of this, you could, I'll give you an example, you could push your child around until he or she becomes a teenager and then she starts looking up to you and asking difficult questions. As a nation, we are growing and people are beginning to ask difficult questions. So the Niger Delta.
So what you're saying in essence is that Nigerians have never actually come together as people from the different nations that form Nigeria to sit down and agree on this space called Nigeria.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Pastor Ademusan, do you agree with the sentiments?
Yeah. I just had a little bit of, and I want to paint a picture here. And I think while it was speaking, the events of 1907 and 1914 actually was like bringing a boy and a girl into an enclosed place. And you say, oh, build a home here. You know, and they were there together, struggling together, trying to learn the ropes, and they've come into all kinds of crises. They've been at war, they've been battles of resource sharing, who's going to do this, who's going to do, you are working, I'm not working, you are just feeding fat on me and all of that. And the Bible says, can two work together unless they are agreed? And I think even for a marriage, there has to be a time of proposal where you make your intent clear. There's not been an intention of all the tribes in this country to sit together in a proposal and say, look, we have agreed to come into this union. So I think this opportunity is very crucial for us to have a time to make proposals to ourselves, to negotiate a relationship and therefore determine what kind of, is it a partnership? Is it a friendship? Is it just a fling we're having? Or is this just or is it a marriage we're having? And I think this is the first time we have an opportunity to actually birth a nation. And so,
Mrs. Hammond, what's your position?
Well, I have a somewhat different view. As a people, what we do is we talk. It's cultural for us. For some, it's a way of expressing pain, which we felt a lot in the last few years. For some, it's even what they can, the only thing they can do in the face of hopelessness. They don't feel they can make any other changes to anything. So we talk as a people, but very rarely does that talk get translated into any action. And there's a very great fear that if we have a national dialogue, we will talk, we'll invest all our emotions, and then nothing comes of it. We had the reconciliation talks, I believe it was in the early 2000s. We haven't seen anything come of it. So for me, one of the challenges we have as a nation is building systems, and I see that happen a lot. Constitutionally, it is the role of the Senate and the House of Representatives to understand what their people want and to present that and to make it happen. So rather than having a discussion to address these issues, I believe that it should be focused. What we should do is get that system to work, that broken engine to work, and have those people represent us, which is what they're there to do.
What do you say to the people that say, if the foundation is faulty, if the foundation of Nigeria is faulty, how do we rectify it? Because of a faulty foundation, we have people in Senate that probably are not representative of the Nigerian people. So isn't a dialogue, and only a dialogue, the thing that can help us decide or build a foundation for Nigeria? Almost as if we're starting Nigeria all over again.
Well, see, here's my problem as well. The foundation might be faulty. I would argue that the foundation itself may not necessarily be faulty. The system we have is a system that has worked in many countries very effectively. What we may possibly have is a disconnect between us understanding where the power of the people really lies and utilizing that power to make sure those who sit in leadership, supposedly representing us, do that. Because even if we hold this national dialogue, we're still going to have to go to them to make sure that all those outcomes are brought to light. So in that way, there are many ways to have a dialogue. We can write, which is what they do everywhere else in a lot of countries in the world. You write to these people, you call them, you enforce that role.
This is a really interesting discussion, but we do need to go on a break. Viewers, stay tuned to the Heart of the Matter. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're talking about national dialogue. Now, just before the break, we were talking about the reasons for a dialogue, and we have those for and those against. Last word on the reasons to you, Mr. Oduwole.
Right. You know, when a country like United States, when they find themselves in any crisis situation, they go back to their founding fathers, what they said. And so Martin Luther can link onto that and said, all men are made equal. And everybody will get the message because they have a rallying point. Even if the dialogue is just for us to sit down for once and say, we agree to live together as Nigerians, that is a significant outcome. That our future, we had a say in it. In every society where you have a forced existence, they break up. The Soviet Union broke up. Or you can go the way of Ukraine. Yeah. Or you have the case of Liberia or Somalia, where you force people, they disintegrate. So the only option is you have a dialogue, and then you can decide on where you go and how you move from there.
Okay, now we are having a dialogue because Mr. President has said so, and he said it's going to be early in the year 2014. Granted. Some of us say yes, some of us say no. If we do have the dialogue, what should we be talking about? What are the issues that we need to bring to the table for a dialogue? Let me start with you, Solape.
Okay. I think one of the issues that has been raised here today is our identity as a nation. For me, it's a little bit of a no-brainer. I was born into Nigeria. I've always embraced and assumed that I'm Nigerian. So for me, it's not as tricky a question, but be that as it may, if it's something that people question, then it's the first thing that should be addressed. Beyond that, we can see some of the clear crisis points. We know that religion divides us and religious freedom. We know that the manner in which our polity is run is a problem. We know that the issues of federalism, be it how monies are allocated or be it how federal character needs to be reflected over merit. Those are main issues. Some of the other issues that are global but don't seem to have really come up in our national, in the mindset of the nation, are rights. Rights for children, rights for every individual, as you have enshrined in the American Constitution, rights for women. So I think that's very, very important as well. And then one key thing, how to amend the immunity clause. That for me is very important.
Okay, those are...
I think essentially for me, the most fundamental issue is the issue of the relationship between the tribes. And I think that if we don't deceive ourselves in this country, before the average Nigerian sees himself as a Nigerian, he first sees himself as his tribe. And I think that's what has played up in our politics all these years. It is the thing that has driven us to this kind of dog-eat-dog politics we play. When will it be my turn? To do what? Your turn to take over resources and be the ruler over the people. And so the issue of tribes, the tribes must be able to come together to determine whether they want to build a nation together with each other. And I think for me, it's very crucial that the tribes get a very good representation at this dialogue. It is the tribes that would determine whether, yes, I want to live with these people under this circumstance as Nigerians and all of that. So for me, that's the addition I make to what she's said.
Right. Yeah, I think we've discussed this and we've identified about 10 items that we thought or we think should be discussed. But on the issue of the Nigerian, I feel like a Nigerian best when I'm at the National Stadium, when the Super Eagles are playing. That's one moment I don't think about whether it's Mohammed that played the ball or Amokachi that scored. Apart from that, the concept of Nigeria is almost a mental note to many people. And like Pastor Demola said, that's why the Northerner gets to think it's my turn to get to the center, because when I get there, I know I'm going to transfer all the wealth to my people. The same thing, the Niger Delta people are complaining, why are all these people making so much money now? So the identity of nation first before the tribe. You ask an American, well, he's first an American. You need to throw 3 or 4 questions before you start getting to originally I came from or I was, and reluctantly give you that kind of response. But first, he's proud to say I'm an American. We are far from there. And that's a huge step in nation building. So on the other things I think we should discuss, you touched on them, fiscal federalism. How do we allocate resources? Why should I make wealth from my region and you enjoy it in the other region where you've not added anything to it? The issue of religion, should that be part of the constitution? The issue of citizenship. If I stay all my life in Lagos, am I a citizen? Am I an indigene of Lagos? As an Igbo man, am I allowed to contest? That's part of the problem in Jos, where people are killing themselves. The problem of security. Do we have state security, or it should be left to the federal government? People have fears. It becomes state police, and then politicians will use it to their own advantage. There are other things, the composition and quality of the civil service, military. Do we want to use federal character or competence, wherever you come from? The legislative powers and representation, how do we get the elections and political parties? Economic development ideology. Right now, we're just, when you have a budget where 75% is recurrent, we're in trouble. Because what you know that you spend that money, but you can't touch it. There's no way you can move a country forward that way. So do you follow the Chinese method of measured capitalism, or you go the American pure capitalism, or you go socialism? Now, you may ask, well, do we want to discuss all of that? But even just having it as a discussion point for these entities that are coming together is enough, is a big step. And that's why I think the advantage of the dialogue should be taken. We have other things that we mentioned should be addressed.
Should we have a parliamentary system, or should we have the presidential system? All of these are legitimate topics to discuss. What are our values as a people? But having had all this discussion, what gives it force of law? How can you have a sovereign executive or president and a national conference that is given sovereignty. What's your take on this issue of a sovereign national conference? And how can we avoid a situation in which a conference convenes, it meets, it comes up with decisions, and those decisions end up in the litter bin?
Well, I think going forward, two things are already working for this. The conference is the original idea of a sitting legitimacy, the presidency. And they set up a committee, and the National Assembly has allowed the committee to work. And so we can say that from those who have elected, who are representing us, they have brought about the idea of this conference, which is very good. It's not like a revolution where we decided to talk to ourselves and say, look, we want to force it on you. So it's their idea, we've accepted it. But I think fundamentally for me, the kind of representation that forms this discussion is what is going to give it legitimacy. We need to get the representation right. Who are the people? How do they come in? Do they represent ethnic groups? Is it religious groups? Is it professionals? Is it labor union? Is it
tribes?
Tribes and all of that. Once we can get a good representation and we can convince ourselves that, oh, okay, yes, every sector of Nigeria that should have a voice is here, that itself validates our discussion.
That in itself is a challenge. How do you get good representation? Let's try and get one point. Who should be represented at this conference?
Okay, well, I was actually going to respond and say that comes back to what I was saying earlier, that even if we do have this national dialogue, we will still have to go back to this imperfect system to make it happen. And it'll be up to them then to decide whether to throw everything we've said away or whether to adopt it. So it's something that cannot be done in isolation. But as Pastor Demola said, it's good that they've at least acceded to this process. What we then need to do is make sure that it's given some form of legitimacy, and there will be some reasonable assurance that the key outcomes, at least the outcomes that are jointly agreed by a vast majority, or whatever means outcomes are allowed to be validated by, will be seen through. The other issue would also be how to resolve issues that are hanging, issues that are very closely contentious, for example, and on which we cannot agree. And then, particularly if they're very, very key issues, if we have a problem with the identity of Nigeria, for example, everything else we agree will not matter. So we need to figure out how we're going to address that. And then what happens if this is not implemented? How do we, as Nigerians, make sure that this is done?
Can I go back to the fundamental question? Who represents Nigerians at the conference? Because we've talked about the fact that we never had a consensus of the Nigerian peoples before Nigeria was formed in 1914. So who represents, how many tribes do we have?
Yeah.
How do we know?
I mean, when you look at when the colonial masters came, they were signing treaties with ethnic nations, with kings. States, regions are all recent creations of arbitrary creations of all the political structures and arrangement. So I think we need to go back to that same fundamental, that foundation. I first see myself Yoruba, Hausa. So I think out of the 250 ethnic nations that we've officially identified, you should have a minimum of at least 2 representatives. We don't want a jamboree, but at least 2 representatives to balance views. So you're already talking about 500 right there.
Some tribes are bigger than others.
Some tribes
Should they
are
have
bigger
more
than
representation
others,
than others?
but the concerns we want to discuss are the same. So the concerns are the same, but yes, you have bigger landmass, bigger population, but it's the same concerns that link us together that we want to discuss. So we must have equal footing ab initio, starting. Secondly, religion can break or build a nation. So I think they need to also have a voice. Muslims, Christians, and people will ask, what about the others? So I will say representatives from the two, and if you have a group of other traditional believers or agnostics, they should also, if they have a body that represents their interest, they should also put forward their own representatives. And I also think the workforce that creates the wealth of this nation, whether represented by labor union, NLC, AUC, should also have a voice, because when everything fails, they usually represent the last place where we go to for mobilization to push forward our concerns. So they should also be represented. 2, 3, 5. You could go on down the list, but then you don't want to fragment the discussion points. What are the things that are causing crisis right now? And by the time you've taken these 3 blocks, you've almost covered almost all the things that are causing problems for us right now. And then you can have a healthy, rich dialogue.
What about the fears that people have that if you have a national conference, we will be unveiling the can of worms and it might fragment the nation? What about those fears? What would you say to somebody who says, if we have a national conference, it's going to lead to the disintegration of Nigeria?
I think my first response to that is that every viable relationship is sustained only by dialogue. It's like a man and a wife in the house. If you don't talk to yourselves, your marriage is on the way breaking down. So dialoguing is consistent with a progressive tendencies of life. So this dialogue, for me, is coming to Nigeria in a time where we see ourselves being disheveled with our differences. We're tearing ourselves apart and nobody wants to talk about it. And I think it's an opportunity to, frankly, for the first time, address ourselves. I mean, if I've wronged you, tell me. If I've been oppressing you, say it. If you think you've been treated inferiorly, say it. What would you like to have? Say it. If I hear you, I have a tendency to understand you better. I have a tendency to even repent of the things I've done against you, and vice versa. And I'm saying it is an opportunity to open our hearts to ourselves. Religion, for example. I mean, when it comes to the issue of politics, people want to say, is it Christian or... In Lagos State, I'm hearing suggestions that is the turn of the Christians. Cosmopolitan Lagos is thinking like that. You can imagine what is happening in the whole of Nigeria. So my suggestion is that, look, everything should be frankly brought to the table. Let's know where we each stand. Then there is a mutuality of compromise that can now make us bind everything together into oneness of a country. So for me, the fears are not germane or genuine in the sense that it will cause us to divide. It will only make me see how I've treated you and how you have treated me.
And also, life must not be lived based on fear. We recognize the fear, but put in a mitigation. How do we address it? When Mandela and the ANC and South Africans said, rather than prosecute, rather than go to court, we will set up reconciliation, truth and reconciliation. You give me the truth, I'll give you forgiveness and reconciliation. People were panicking. How will this work? Confess all the killings I've done? But it happened. People confessed the killing, took people to where they buried them, and in response, children of slain victims forgave.
We have had dialogues before. We've had constitution review assemblies and so on. And one of the things that marks them all is that the representation was skewed. Right. I mean, we had government or the president had the right to appoint a certain number of people, and in many people's minds, that skewed the whole outcome. Right. What can be done with this dialogue that can give a sense of fairness to everybody who watches the dialogue progress?
Well, for me, I think there are 2 things that need to be done. I think, first of all, everyone must be involved in the process before, and everyone must be involved in the process after. It will be a bit cumbersome to have everyone from whatever constituencies we break them up into, selecting perhaps 2 representatives, but it's something that we need to do. And afterwards, whatever has been presented on their behalf, they need to accede to it and show ownership and agree that this is ours. Wonderful. Until we have ownership by all, it will not be owned. The second thing is it has to be transparent and open. We have to televise everything. We've got to publish everything. It has to be readily available for everyone to see, so that even if it's not taken forward later, it's something that we can always reference.
I fully agree with that, and that's our thinking that if you hand select people, you've killed legitimacy right there. And so this process of selecting the representatives must be grassroots driven. I should be able, once the committee sets out this is the criteria for representation, Tunde should be able to say I'm interested.
What prevents the politicians? They have the resources from becoming the representatives of the people.
So that's where the process of the transparency for getting nominated becomes critical. And the process we've discussed, it's not perfect, but if I'm representing my area, I need to go back there. Let's have, if 20 of us are interested, let 20 of us come out, debate our interest, put our track record, put our agenda, lead town hall meetings. Say, we are interested in this guy, we like what you're saying, and have a legitimate bottom up. Once people are part of the solution, they ensure it works.
So this is not going to happen in the early part of 2014.
Well, that's a challenge, and it's better to put in all the efforts at the beginning rather than expect magic at the end. It's better to invest in the time and the process at the beginning and quietly wait for a good result rather than the other.
There are concerns. Yeah, okay.
You know, I think from what Mrs. Hammond said earlier, we have been discussing. We have just not been organized. So there's a lot of discussion already. Many of these views are already distilled and known. It's to aggregate them. And the issue of organization and transparency and coming from the grassroots. And one thing she said, which is very crucial, is that let the representatives revalidate their opinion from those who send them.
Yes.
So that you don't go there and continue to speak for yourself.
Yes.
Or your vested interest or your bought interest. They go and buy you. And so you are truly representative because you are locked down to your roots. And I can sleep knowing that what you are saying is what we agree that you should say. And you know, for me, I think the time is very short. But the essence of what can be done is not the information we need is there. The way we want to live, we already know. It is to voice it out. And like they say at the wedding, if there's anybody here who knows a reason why these two people should be joined together, they should speak now or forever hold their peace. So let everybody speak. While we are discussing, you can still be speaking. Mm-hmm. The press will carry it. So even if you don't become a representative there, speak. This is not what we told the man to say. Oh, he's now on his own. That's the dialogue, and it becomes a national dialogue. That's even our representatives. I have an idea really that I've toyed around with. Could they be part of the representation? In the essence that we don't now have to revert to them when they sit at the discussion. So that since you participated there and there was voting and agreement there, and this is agreed, then it's already valid. So the issue of sovereignty of our discussion can be solved with one stone. You know, that look, you are there, you've represented, come. But in addition to you, let other people come. Core tribe, core religion, core labor, and all of that. Let's all sit down together. And that final thing that comes becomes a document that is sacrosanct. And I think that's the way out of the lockdown of, oh, do they have to go to National Assembly again? And they have to now politic and decide, no, it's only a woman with a lot of money gets them on the side and we're thrown back to. So I think we should consider making them the first member of this discussion.
There's quite a number of them. There's nearly 500 altogether.
No, we can distill it in the sense that a senator has come from a particular area. Maybe a senator, and then joins with, instead of three, is it 3 reps or 5 from each one?
It's 3 senators and then 1 from each of the local governments.
And we can just find a way to distill it. In their numbers, totality of it, I don't think they're up to 400.
About 500.
About 500.
About 500, yeah. I think it's a first group to start. And you join them with other people that represent religion and all these things we've been talking about. And then the legitimacy...
They do not represent the ethnic nationalities of Nigeria. Because you could have a senatorial district, for instance, in which you have more than one ethnic nationality. So who speaks?
I think that's what the House of Reps.
Well,
No, that's what the House of Representation, thing.
I think it's a very good idea in terms of, particularly in terms of addressing the legitimacy. And I think even if we have 1,000 people, 1,200 people to represent the view of 160 million, I think it's not too much of a number.
Here's another fair. Elections are coming up in March 2015, and this conference needs to have been dealt with, to have held, and the outcomes influence the type of government the people we vote in 2015 are. Where's the time going to come from? Is it plausible to have a conference before the next election?
I think it's possible. You already have the Arewa Forum. They've been talking. They actually held their own mini national dialogue or regional dialogue You have the Afenifere, the Yoruba group. They already had theirs. You had the Southwest or Southeast, Clark and Co. They had theirs. So the idea, the representation, I think to a large extent are already shaping up. So what is happening right now is, now you have a government saying, set, go. If the political will is there, I think it can happen in 6 months. If you have the political will, because the issues are known, the only time waster or potentially they might lose time is, okay, how do we select these people? And based on what we've discussed, it's possible, because if you want to ask a discussion of the Yorubas today, and Afenifere puts out an advert in the papers and say, meet us at City Hall, the place will be filled with people who are interested. But the challenge, which is my greatest fear of the Sovereign Conference, is that people with good intention usually don't rise up for things like this. They doubt it, they don't believe in it, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What they say will happen then happens, because they've left it to the touts and the opportunists and the people who had the time, and that's been the story of this country. And
you see, you've mentioned the Yorubas, but the Yoruba are not an ethnic nation. They are a group of different ethnic nationalities. How do you get the Ifes or the Modakekes, if you like, or the Egbas to have their own discussion? But we're going to come back to that in a moment. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment. Viewers, stay tuned to the heart of the matter. This is important. Welcome back to the Heart of the Matter, where we're continuing our discussion on the national dialogue. Just before we went on the break, we're talking about how do we get the representation. And there were a couple of points that were made. Nigerians need to show interest. Would you like to take us up on that? How does the man who is Mr. Average get involved in this process?
Yeah, I think that is what actually, that's the soul of the national dialogue. Achebe, in one of his books, The Trouble with Nigeria, said, the vile among us are always the one that have the energy to go forward, whilst the good ones stand aside and look. So I think first get involved by saying, I want to be part of my own future. Like a mother giving birth to a child, I want to be part of a safe delivery, not an observer. Can you nominate yourself? Do you think you have the credentials, the idea? Put yourself forward. 2, you see a candidate parading himself saying he's interested, and you know things about them that are not true, the character, integrity, stand up and say so. Get interested in the discussion that's going on there. And I think just putting everybody on their toes, that 160 million Nigerians are watching you, that's enough to make something good come out of this. And the people who say, don't believe this, it's a scam, it's not going to work, I tell you, they already have their list of candidates ready. And all they want to do is reduce the opposition and have a free way.
Anybody else?
Yes, for me, I think that even the time available for this discussion, it's much more than we even need for the discussion. Why? The opinions are distilled already, for me. I think the Yoruba nation, they know what they want out of Nigeria. The Ijaw nation knows. The Southeast knows. But the problem is this: there's something at the center that's forced ideas and opinions down everybody's throat. The important thing is to be able to go out there for the first time and speak out your mind with truth. Say it frankly. Tell him, this is what I want from you. If we're going to live together, this is how I want to live with you, and all of that. For me, that discussion is not going to take us a long time to bring it out. The problem will be how the negotiations will take place. How do we now bridge all these divides? How do we come to an agreement about now? And that will be a matter of give and take. That will take a process of time. If I give this to you, what do I get in return? And by the time you've done that, then you've set up a kind of code of conduct, of relationship. And this is where the nation is, for the first time, built. And this will take us forward. But look, remember what you said. This is the code of conduct. I've given you this. You ought to give me this. And Nigeria will forever fly from that. But don't let anybody sit back. And I think I like what Mrs. Hammond said again. I go back to it. The discussion is not more about representation, but more about the views that comes from representation. If you can't be there, make sure your view is being spoken. And you can do that at your grassroots level, where you make your opinion known. Town hall, go there and say it. And there'll be aggregates of those opinions that will distill into some opinions that will go. Just to make sure that what we said to him is what he's saying. And that can be done, and that makes us all participatory. So all of us can discuss this if nobody's sitting back. Let everybody's opinion be crucial. And for me, it's the last opportunity Nigeria has to give back to a nation. If we don't do it, this young generation of people, the world is moving so fast, they are not as patient as our generation has been. And I don't think they'll be able to tolerate this chaos that is called Nigeria.
Mrs. Hammond, you said transparency is a key to a successful conference. So how do we ensure? Because we hardly do anything that's transparent in our environment. Even our elections have always been contested. How can we ensure that this will be transparent?
For me, if we're going to do this as a nation, this is the opportunity for each and every one of us now to step up to be leaders. I'm one of those who's always believed the problem of Nigeria is not the leadership at the top. It's the fact that all of us fail to be leaders in our own individual ways, and that's why we fall victim to some of the things. It's either we don't step up or we sell out, and as a result, we get what we get. In this process, it has to be all hands on deck, and it has to be everyone remembering this is about Nigeria and not about me. There's so many I think there's, at the last count, there's probably 10,000 NGOs in Nigeria. There's civil organizations, there's technology. We need to take control of the process right from the very beginning. Because when you have that and we document and we keep, I know we're not known for being very diligent and I think we're diligent as a nation, but not very detailed. But we need to do that this time.
So how does the man who's watching this program bring out the leader in him?
Well,
he's going to tell you that who's going to listen to me?
Well, he starts, and I think it's the role of some of us to make that happen. For example, I know we have an outreach in Obalende, part of which what we do is media and awareness. It's going to them and even capturing their views. It's so easy. You can have a section on national television running right from today, not even waiting until that process starts, where you capture the average man on the street's views. You can have websites where they know they can go and see. By the time every Nigerian starts to have their own 2 minutes in Nigeria to speak and everyone can see that, then they know that, okay, my views do count. And that's where we need to get to, where every single person in Nigeria is important.
Any other views on that?
I think she nailed it. Leadership must start from me, the man in the mirror, and also the people are the leadership of the committee. I mean, what the advisory committee has done, I think, is quite commendable. They went around the country, submitted, I hear, about 4,000-page document. I think that's a good start. That rigor, you can't run away from that rigor to get transparency. So the quality of the leadership handed the role to organize this is key. And how they communicate the process. This is what we're going to do. This is what we have done. Any comment, feedback. I think that whole process is, because like we say, the fish rots from the head. If the people are willing, are ready to go, and you hand them over to a bunch of people who already have a destination different from the mandate, they will truncate the whole thing. So the integrity of the committee with this mandate is extremely crucial. And as they're being nominated, we need to shout, yes, this man is okay. This man, we have concerns with him.
I think one thing we need to put on top of this is that because of the media revolution that we have, the discussions at the town hall meetings should be in the media by now. Everything that was said in all those areas the committees were in, the report of the committee should be out in the open by now.
Yes.
And government's final white paper on it should be out in the open. That's the transparency. So we want to cross-check. Is this what I said that was recorded?
Indeed.
Is this the aggregate of the views they got at the discussion here? And that process is already the process that makes you believe it.
Yes.
That look, wow, no, there's no hiding of anything in this place. Everybody is making it open. And I think government is falling back on that. The committee's report should not be a privilege of the presidency. It's been submitted to him to act, but it should be in the open for us to gaze at and see. His final white paper, when it comes, we want to look at it vis-a-vis what the committee gave him. and be able to say this. And once all these things build confidences in us, I mean, our discussion is already on the way to success.
Now, if we had an hour, we would still be talking. But we do have to round up now. And correct me if I'm wrong. In summary, we've agreed that not all of us agree on the need for national conference, but whether we agree or not, we agree that we should all participate in it since it is going to happen. Okay, that's the first thing. Then we've also agreed that we need to talk about our identity as a people. We need to talk about the way we run our governments. We need to talk about the way we divide resources. We need to talk about issues like state police or so many religion. All of these are issues that need to be talked about, and that what we need to have is representation by the people that make up Nigeria, the different ethnic nationalities, the professions, the religions, and so on. Does that capture it?
Oh, yes, it does.
So viewers, what we're saying is that this is not a national dialogue for politicians or for a few elite. It is a national dialogue for all Nigerians, so all Nigerians must be involved. And on the heart of the matter, we will keep on talking about the national dialogue from time to time. I hope you've enjoyed this. We're really grateful that you spared time to be with us to present this program, and I'm sure we'll come back to you at some point or the other on this question of national dialogue. We'll be back again next week with another episode of The Heart of the Matter. Until then, stay blessed.